Hey folks, welcome back to Mears Lab. In today's episode, we are going to be having a big old deep dive on everybody's favorite thing, the DI box. You know, whenever I think of DI boxes, one of the first things that comes to mind is it's always kind of one of those things that's sort of rattling around in the bottom of your bag or the back of your knapsack, or maybe you always see it hanging out there on the shelf at the music store. And you know, it's kind of like one of those mystical things. You know that it is very useful and that it does a lot of cool stuff. And you see people using them all the time. And maybe you've even plugged into them before. But you know, they tend to be something that there's so many questions about. Like, what is it? And what does it do? And what does DI even mean? Well, folks, rest assured, by the end of this video, you're going to have the answers to all those questions and so many more. Let's get started by answering the biggest question in the room, which is, well, what the heck does DI even mean? Well, I'm just going to answer it right here for you, folks. Direct input. It means you want to plug something directly into something. Like you want to plug your guitar into a mixer. You want to plug your guitar directly into the mixer. There you go. That's what it means. You know, there's a little bit of a giveaway right over here. It says direct box on it. You know, I suppose it is a PDB. It's not a PDI. You know, probably make a lot more sense if they did call it PDI, but you know, that's art for you. One of the good old Yorkville brands. Always got to do things a little bit squirrely, but you know, if you can get past that, they're generally pretty awesome, actually. But you know, I just chalk that up to character, and you know, so that makes art products in Yorkville pretty cool, as far as I'm concerned. Anyways, let's get back to what we're even talking about here, which is not direct boxes. It's DI, well, kind of it is direct boxes, but it's actually DI boxes. And you know what? Even though it's called that, this right here, believe it or not, it is a DI box. It's a direct box. But it's actually two of them in one. So let's talk about that first, because you know, you may be a little confused. So this is really, it's pretty simple. It's just like two DI boxes in one box. It's like if I were to put my hand like that and you were to just completely forget that this side of the video even exists, and while we're at it, you know, we could even forget that that side exists. We could pretend that this is like a vertical video. And in that imaginary hypothetical world where this side of the video doesn't exist and this side also doesn't exist, we can also imagine that this is just one single DI box. In fact, I think that art sells something like that, called like a, I don't know, it's probably called like a PSB or something like that. Like, I don't know. Or maybe just a DB, I don't know. Anyways, that doesn't matter. Okay. In this hypothetical world, it would just be one. And then imagine that I went like this, and there's like another one right beside it. And then we were like glued them together, and then there would be like two of them. And it would be like almost like two vertical videos that become one into a 16:9 format video. Anyways, that's just like one way that you could look at direct boxes. There's like a lot of ways that you could look at them. And really, there's a lot of things that they do. They don't just inspire the mind creatively. They actually inspire audiences. They inspire musicians. They do a lot of things just for a meager little metal box like this, you know? They really do a lot of cool stuff. And look at them. Like they're pretty cool. Like they're all made out of metal and they're heavy and got like a bunch of cool inputs and things on them. And look at this cryptic writing all over it and switches, and they've got, well, it's not all that much interesting stuff in the bottom. But like, you know, one of the things I think is really cool about this DI box And a lot of other DI boxes is just how much character there is in them, you know? Like this one's got like some stuff I taped on it. Oh, way back in the day. And I remember like exactly when I did it and why I did it. And it's cool, you know? So like when I look at my DI box, I have a lot of memories attached to it, you know? And these are useful things I've marked on it as well too. And it's just kind of cool, you know? And you know, we're going to talk about all that stuff throughout the video. I just don't want to get into it just yet, you know? This is just, you know, we're just kind of having some fun here in the intro and chit-chatting about some cool stuff about that maybe coming up in the video later on. And, well, let's not beat around the bush. Very likely is going to be coming up in the video. So, speaking of that, what is a direct box? Like, we know what DI means, but like what is a DI box? Like, what does it do? Why is it, you know, and all of those other W's and things? Well, let's get right into it. So, I guess, you know, a DI box is a way that you can, like the name says, it's like you can plug something directly into the mixer. And I guess the best way I can answer that is really with another question. Like, why would you want to plug something directly into a mixer? Well, I guess it's pretty simple. You know, it's because you have something that you want to make louder, right? Like you have a guitar and you have a song you want to play for some people at some place, you know, and they have a sound system and you want to make your instrument louder. And for whatever reason, maybe you can't use a microphone, you know? Heck, maybe you just don't even want to use a microphone. Maybe you don't like microphones. Maybe you got a problem with microphones, you know? Like, I don't. Personally, I like microphones. I think they're pretty cool, you know? Even though we're talking about DIs, you know, like, it's okay. Mics can be cool as well, too. So you're at some place, you want to make your guitar louder, and for whatever reason, you can't or don't want to use a microphone. Well, this is how you can make your instrument louder. You can just plug your instrument directly into the sound system, right? And you know, I realize that it's taken me a very long time to get to that very basic point, but you know, sometimes it's just nice to think about things in those real simple terms, you know? Like this big scary thing with all these inputs and stuff all over it, it's really not that bad. When you understand all it really is meant to do simply is just allow you to safely plug your instrument into a sound system so that it's not going to break anything. And it's also going to make sure that whatever you plug into the sound system sounds right. It sounds like it's supposed to. It's not going to be too loud. It's not going to be too quiet. It's not going to sound distorted. It's not going to sound all thin. It's not going to be too bassy. It's not going to sound dull or weak or scratchy or itchy or, I don't know, any adjective that you could possibly think of other than good. You know, it just sounds normal, right? And that's what DI boxes do. That's why they tend to hang out at the bottom of the bag, really, you know? That's why they're always in the back of the knapsack. That's why they're always just hanging out there in the bottom shelf at the music store. They're not really like stealing the glory, you know? Really, you know, they're kind of like the bass player, sort of in like, you know, in most bands, I would say. Really, the bass player, everybody loves the bass player. I mean, you respect the bass player. The bass player's awesome, you know, but the bass player usually is not out there in the front of the band, you know. It's always the singer or the guitarist or whatever, you know, or, you know, and drummer, yeah, we love you, drummer. Don't worry, we haven't forgotten about you. But like, I kind of think like the DI is like the bass player in the band, you know? They're hanging in there, they know what they got to do, and they're doing an awesome job of it, and they love just holding it together and sort of being the glue. You know, not everybody understands why or how they make it work, but it doesn't matter, because they know what they got to do and they just get the job done. And that is sort of like my theory on DI boxes, you know? And I like sort of sharing that sort of stuff with you folks out there because, well, you know, like, DI boxes, they deserve respect as well, too. And I'm just going to say this from the perspective of I'm actually a guitar player, okay? Like, I have played bass in bands before, and but I am a guitar player playing bass, you know? So I'm not really a bass player. But, like, I get it, you know? And I think that it's important to think about things in life, not just DI boxes, you know? But, like, things in life from different perspectives, you know, man? Like, try to think about, you know, everything in your life, maybe from the perspective of, I wonder what a bass player would think about this, or maybe I wonder what the drummer would think about this. I don't know. Anyways, we're getting like way off topic here. Okay. So we know like what it does, and we know now like why it does it, right? So, well, like, how does it do it? Well, this is sort of like, I guess, where we get into the more technical part of the video. So strap yourselves in, folks. This is where it gets real fun. And, well, I really, really liked getting in this part. So here we go. So direct box is basically comes in a few different varieties. And this one right here is what's called a passive direct box. And that means it doesn't require any kind of power. You don't need to use a battery. You don't need to have phantom power. Or you don't even have to think about or worry about any of that stuff at all whatsoever, because it doesn't need any of it. It's totally passive. It's really simple and really easy to use, and that's also one of the reasons why passive direct boxes, I would say, tend to be more popular than active direct boxes. You know, some folks have some sort of like an idea that, I don't know, active boxes are more professional in some way, but that is totally untrue. Just like most things in life, they're just for something different. And, you know, I think that for the scope of this video, we're probably just mostly going to focus on passive direct boxes, but, you know, we'll talk about active direct boxes a little bit, you know, but I don't have one here. So maybe we'll just focus on passive direct boxes for now. But a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about with passive direct boxes would also apply to active direct boxes. In fact, almost everything except for what you would use it for and how you would technically use it, you know. And actually, you know, while we're on that topic, I might as well just mention it right now, okay? So in general, you would use a passive direct box for things that have active outputs, and you would use active direct boxes for things that have passive outputs. So what are some examples of that? So if you're using a passive direct box that doesn't have any power, it means that the thing that is sending audio to it, like your guitar, the source, or whatever you're plugging into the direct box, that means that it would need to be powered itself, like have some sort of battery or some sort of electrical amplification circuit inside of it, right? So examples would be like a keyboard. Like it has a whole bunch of like chips and microchips and capacitors and resistors and all kinds of stuff like that inside of it. And it has a volume knob on it that can make the output very loud, and it plugs into the wall. So it has a very loud output, and that means that it is best to plug into something like a passive direct box, because it doesn't need really any further sort of amplification. It doesn't need any extra juice or power or anything. And that's exactly what passive direct boxes are good for, is they don't really do much of anything to the signal except for just sort of get it under control, if you will. They have a very simple circuit inside of them comprising really of just a transformer, and we're going to get into that later, and a couple of switches and buttons and things like that, but they really are super simple on the inside, these passive direct boxes. And an active box is the opposite of that. It has all kinds of circuitry inside of it, and it actually needs power. It needs a battery. It needs to be supplied with phantom power. If you don't have a battery, you can use one or the other. It's okay. we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. So another example of another active output would be an acoustic guitar that has a battery inside of it. It has a little preamp inside of it, and that means it has like an active output. And so you would use a passive direct box for an acoustic guitar that uses a battery inside of it. You know, if you have an acoustic guitar that has a tuner on it, it very likely has an active output. If your guitar has any kind of battery inside of it, it definitely has an active output. If it doesn't need any kind of battery, then it probably is a passive output, and then you would want to use an active direct box for your acoustic guitar. So electric guitars are kind of interesting because sort of similar to acoustic guitars, but I think maybe a better example because they could come in either active or passive outputs. Like most electric guitars, though, like Stratocasters and Les Pauls, they would mostly be passive outputs, even though they have humbuckers in a Les Paul and single coils in a Strat. That doesn't matter. They don't use batteries to make them louder. You know, they're just like literally a magnet with wires wrapped around it, picking up vibrations in tiny little electrical signals. You know, and that's what the active box would be good for in that example, because it would give it some added juice. Like the active box is almost like a little preamp, just giving it the extra juice so that you don't lose any more signal when it has to travel through long cables and maybe go through other processors or something like that, so that you're preserving as much of the original signal as possible, and you get to maintain as much of the original tone and sound as possible, and also get the best signal to noise ratio as possible, so you don't get any noise leaking into it, like hiss or crackles and any of those nasty little gremlins. So when you're thinking about something with a passive output, like an electric guitar that doesn't use a battery, or an acoustic guitar that doesn't use a battery, or maybe you even have some other kind of instrument like a mandolin that doesn't use a battery but has an output on it, or a violin, or any other kind of thing like an acoustic instrument, or anything else that you can think of, but it doesn't use a battery. It's a passive output then. It's a very weak signal coming out of it, and that's why you would use an active direct box to give it that added juice, so that when it travels through the cables, you don't lose any signal, and you get the best tone and signal to noise ratio. So okay, we've talked a lot about what an active box is, but we don't even have one here in front of us. But you know what? That's okay, because we wanted to get all that out of the way. And, you know, maybe I'll do another video and I'll focus more on an active direct box. But I'm glad we talked about it at least a little bit. But let's get back to the passive direct box. So you'd use this for something that has a battery in the output. So getting back to the example with electric guitars, if your electric guitar like had maybe some EMG pickups in it, and it needed a 9-volt battery, or a bass guitar is an even better example, a bass guitar that you maybe have a battery in, and it has like an onboard preamp with a bass and a mid and a treble, then that's an active output, and then that's when you would use a passive direct box. And the reason why is because the signal that's going to come out of something that's active is already really loud. It's already been actively amplified by a circuitry that has a battery and required power. And so it has all of the juice it already needs to get through all of the long cables to plug into the sound system. Like, don't forget, some of these cables that you're going to run through are, well, to go from, say, like your instrument to the direct box is probably 20 feet. And then from the direct box to the snake on the stage, like the stage box is probably 25 feet. So then you're at you're like 45 feet there. And then most snakes are 50 to 100 feet. So let's just say 50 feet. Then you're already at 100 feet of cable length. And, you know, anywhere beyond, I'm going to say 6 feet of cable length, you can start to somewhat notice the signal difference, but that's mostly in a studio situation. If you're in a live situation, through most PA systems that are out there, like, you're not going to really hear a lot of signal degradation until you start to get to like 50 feet of cable length. It's like some good ears will hear it at like 20 feet, but like 50 and 100, like if it's an A/B test, a lot of people could actually hear the difference of that. But you know, whether that actually matters in a live venue or not is negligible, you know, and that's not what we're here to argue about today. But that is something to be aware of, at least anyways, because you can use that in your decision-making processes, you know? So, anyways, we're kind of getting way off topic again, you know, but, you know, that's sort of the spirit of these videos as well, too. So, you know, let's just roll with it. So, if you've got an instrument with an active output, like an acoustic guitar that takes a battery, electric guitar with a battery in it, it's got a lot of juice in that signal to travel a long cable length. So it doesn't need any extra added juice from the direct box. And that's why you use the passive, because it doesn't do that. All it does is it just takes your signal, it neither adds nor really subtracts anything from it. It just sort of changes the signal in a way so that it preserves everything, but allows it to travel through very long cable lengths and not really see any other degradation. And the way that it does that is it takes you may have heard these terms before, it takes an unbalanced signal and it turns it into a balanced signal. And it does that through the use of a transformer. Now, I'm going to do my best to sort of describe how that sort of works. Because this is a super technical video, but you know, I may not go super deep on that because I think that we're kind of already getting pretty far into the weeds here, you know. There's a lot of other good stuff out there on the internets that you can find out about transformers, but do some reading about those and how they work, you know. But basically, it takes like a signal that is very susceptible to noise and signal degradation over long cable lengths, which is an unbalanced signal, like the kind that comes into your guitar, like just uses a regular, like in general, mostly things that use like just a regular 1/4-inch patch cable, like just your regular everyday 1/4-inch cable. That's in general an unbalanced signal. And it's fine for cable lengths up to 10 to 20 feet, you know. You know, and most regular standard quality cables are fine up to 20 feet. And you know, and only like annoying people are gonna really care about this sort of stuff anyways. So like, you're probably really fine for even like up to 50 feet, honestly. Or maybe even 100, but yeah, 100 feet of cable is frankly just annoying and gets tangled all the time. So yeah, forget about that. Now we've got a bit of an idea on what an unbalanced signal is. So what is a balanced signal on the other side? Like what comes out of it, you know, like a signal comes in this side of it and then it comes out of this side of the direct box, right? Maybe I should like kind of have it like that, really. Yeah. Let's put it like that. So like signal is going to go in here and then it comes out of there. You can, you know, as evidenced by the input and the output right here. But, you know, even though my arrows are pointing the wrong way here, unfortunately. But, yeah, the balanced signal that comes out of this, it sort of takes like the signal here and it sort of splits it into two. And what it really does is it takes that one signal that comes out of your instrument and then it splits it into sort of one wire, which is what would be maybe called a hot, or like the positive signal, and then it also flips the other one what's called out of phase. And that's the special sort of sauce, the magic trick that allows it to reject noise and your signal to travel over really long cable lengths. Is it takes that same signal and it just sort of flips it upside down. And that has this cool ability to cancel out noise. And then once the split signal hits the input of your mixer or your audio interface or whatever the heck it's plugged into, then the circuitry inside of that does whatever it needs to do to make it come out of the speakers or do whatever it has to do next. And, you know, speaking of balanced and unbalanced signals and cable types and things, this is an XLR cable right here. You may have seen these before. You typically see these used with microphones, but you can also see these used with a lot of professional audio equipment as well too, like mixers and stuff like that. And in general, XLR connectors are always a balanced signal, and 1/4-inch connectors are always an unbalanced signal. But that is not totally true, because you can have unbalanced signals traveling through an XLR connector and balanced signals traveling through a 1/4-inch connector. But you know, that's a little bit more than the deep dive I want to get into right now. We just sort of wanted to talk a little bit about unbalanced signals and balanced signals and the technical stuff about that sort of thing, you know? And well, heck, you know, while we're on that topic, well, let's just crack this thing open and have a look at the inside of it. Okay, I think this is how we get in. Give this a go. Oh, you know what? No. I don't know. Let's take these guys off of here first. I think I'm gonna have to remove those anyways. Let's just take them off now. There we go. Ugh. You know, sometimes I always wonder whether I should show this sort of stuff on camera, because like, who wants to see me take nuts off of things? Right? And nobody else shows that sort of stuff on camera. But then that sort of makes me feel like, well, maybe I should show that sort of stuff on camera, because like nobody else is doing it, right? And sometimes you want to see how this sort of stuff is done. And if nobody shows it, well then like, how is anybody ever going to find out? So anyways, I'm just going to like leave it on, because this is already a deep dive video anyways. So, you know, let's just keep it trucking here, folks. Okay. And take that out of there. All right. And there. Not even sure if this is going to get us in. Oh, we're in. Okay. All right, let's take that away. All right. And here we go, folks. This is what the inside of a direct box looks like. Oh boy, this must be such an exciting moment. I hope it is as exciting for you as it is for me. All right, well, let's you know what? No, it's not lift it up. Let's just, oh, I can't zoom in. Okay, yeah, let's just lift it up. So let's get right in here, folks. Oh yeah. So what are we looking at here? I'm going to talk about what all these things are and what they do. All right, let's just put it down, okay? Okay, so, yeah, I'll just use the screwdriver. It's right here. So, remember how we talked about in that hypothetical world at the start of this video that there really was just 2 boxes inside of this one box, you know? Well, I wasn't just playing a trick on you folks. There actually really are 2 of the exact same things inside of this. Look at that. There's 2 circuit boards, and they're exactly the same, and they're called PDB. And I bet you that if you opened up one of Art Pro Audio's single direct boxes, you'd see exactly that inside of it. And yeah, you know, I think that's pretty clever of them to just, you know, take like 2 things and put it into one, charge people a little bit less money because it doesn't take as much work to make it or cost as much money. And everybody sort of wins. It's great. It's like a win-win-win. Love it. So, anyways, yeah, what are we even looking at here, okay? And I have made one interesting observation right off the bat, is that these transformers look a little different. They're the same model number, but they sure do look a little different. And another observation I've made is that I should not have removed those nuts, because now these boards are moving all over the place. Oh well, maybe that's kind of fun. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's actually kind of fun, because now I can like take them out. I can look at the bottom of it too. Okay, cool. Let's do that. All right. Anyways, actually, yeah, let's just take that right out of here. then let's just put a couple of those back on there. And that way those washers won't fall off. Okay, there we go. Okay, now this is way more fun now. All right. These are the input sockets right here, and they're interchangeable. You can actually plug into either one. These are connected on the board in parallel. If we look over here, all the pins here, the connectors are between the two ones of these. They're actually soldered together. And what that means is that you can actually sort of mix these together. It's kind of like not a great thing to do because there's no resistors in between them to help isolate these signals. So that like a tiny chance could damage something. More likely just would make things not sound right. But yeah, you could like in a pinch, you could like plug two guitars into one input with a DI box like this, which would be cool. Like even if you only had the single direct box, but it had an input and a through, like on this one, if I flip it over here, you can see it has an input and it has another one and an in through. And what you would normally use that for is this is like where you would normally plug in, and then the signal will go through the box and into the PA system. But you could take this socket right here and you could use another cable and plug it into that, from that into something else. Like maybe you have like another monitor on stage, like or a speaker or an amplifier or a headphone amplifier or anything else, but you just also wanted to have like another tap off of your signal for something else. Well, that's what this is for. It would allow you to just take your signal, and because it's wired in parallel, it would be exactly the same without any sort of degradation at all whatsoever. And if there was, it would be like super negligible, like 0.1111, like it would be super negligible, because it would just be from like degradation from passing through the connectors, you know, like barely even anything. But it would allow you to take your whatever you plugged in and then like plug it into a, like say an amplifier on stage. If you had a good example would be an acoustic guitar. You would plug your acoustic guitar in here, and then this would go out of the direct box to the PA system, and then you would take this socket right here, and then you would plug a wire from that into like your acoustic guitar amplifier on stage, and then you could like adjust your volumes, and you would be totally independent from the sound system. Meaning like, sorry, not you, I mean like your amplifier would be totally independent. Like you could set all the settings on that any way you want, and it would not interfere with the PA system at all whatsoever. And that's a really cool benefit of using a direct box like this. Okay, so yeah, I think kind of talked about that enough. Let's look at the connectors here, because that's fun looking at this. It's really cool. So you can see when you look at these are wired to accept balanced signals. I think so. Are they? Yeah, we'll look at the circuit board a little bit closer here in a minute and see if those actually are. Okay, so you can see on the circuit board, you know, these would be referred to as tip ring sleeve connectors or sockets, and it's cool. You can see on the board it's written, hopefully you can see that TRS right there, so you know which part's which, right? But you would also know by just like plugging the connector in here. You know that the tip is the end of it, and the ring is the part right after the tip, and then the sleeve is the ground, right? The part after that, just by physically the positions of things. Then you can look at the bottom of this and you can know that that's the tip, and then that would be the ring, and then that would be the sleeve. So the way that we can tell if this is actually wired as a balanced input or an unbalanced input, well, honestly, for one, we could just look at the front of it, because it would tell us. This appears to me, from the look at this, it says that this is unbalanced, the wiring, but the circuit board appears otherwise, so that's why we're talking about it. That looks interesting. Okay, so the tip is right here. That's where like the actual main meat and potatoes of the signal is. So it comes in here, and it's not connected to the ring or anything else. You can visually see it, you know, and And hey, you know, let's pull out my multimeter and we'll actually test it and see if it really is. So what I'll do is I'll just put this on the continuity setting right here. And so then if things are connected together, you'll hear a beep. And you can also see the resistance reading on the screen right there. Okay, so this would be the tip. So you see if I tap these together, they're connected together, and that is, of course, and that's where it's wired into the transformer. That's the transformer right over there. And so this is the tip. Let's see if it's connected to the ring. Ooh. It's reading some resistance. I wonder why it's reading some resistance. It's reading 743 ohms. Interesting. Well, what does it read between the ring and the sleeve, which would be the ground? Nothing. So they're not connected at all. And now there's the tip in the sleeve. So that's interesting. These are wired together. There's some sort of resistance between them. But there's no connection, of course, between the tip and the sleeve or the ring and the sleeve. And you can see that these are all like wired together. So I can just show you right now, like, you know, all the sleeves are wired together here. But you can also just see from the circuit board, when you look at it, like the you can see these, like the shiny area right here. That's like underneath that, that's where all the copper trace is. It just has this protective sort of light green layer over top of it. But everything is connected together here, you know? And all those are. And then the dark green area is where everything's separated. So if you were to look, it's almost like a road map or something like that, you know? And so this is where like these signals are connected together, is over here. And if we look over here, it seems like they may be connected from here to here and there to there perhaps as well too. And let's flip it over and see what's happening there. Aha, look at that. There's the resistors. And that's the reason why we're reading some resistance, I bet. So let's look at the resistors, and hopefully you can see here. And what's the color code on the resistors? Let's see here. On this one, which is R101, is I gotta look closely. It's yellow, purple, orange. Okay, so yellow is a 4, and purple is a 7, and orange means 3. Okay, so that means it's 47 followed by 3 zeros, so that's 47,000. That would be a 47K resistor, and it's a gold band on the back of it. So that's a gold. That's a really nice high tolerance. Okay, and oh boy, for some reason I can't remember that right now. What is that? 1%? I don't know. Don't kill me if I get that number wrong, but that's just a really tight tolerance. It's a good resistor, that one. All these are nice resistors. They're all gold tolerance. How about that? Good on you, Art. Now this one, that's a green band right there. Look at that. That's cool. And there is a blue, and there's a red, and followed by gold. So green is 6, and blue is 8, and red is 2. So that would be 6,800. Oh, 6.8K. Okay. And then this one is yellow, purple, brown, gold. Okay, and yellow is 4, just like this one, but the third band is a little different. This is yellow, so 4. And purple is a 7, so 4, 7, and brown is just a 1, 1, 0. Okay, so this will be 470, 470. Okay, so let's check the resistance on these. Let's just take it at a continuity. So this was the 47K, and it's actually reading, oh, come on, I can't get the thingamajigs on there, 46.3K. You know, that's pretty good, because 1% would be, what would that be? 4.7, 0.47. Is that right? 47. I don't know. I can't even think straight right now. It'd be something like that anyways. It'd be like 0.5%. Like, anyways. So, you know what? Maybe that actually is a little bit out. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe gold is like 5% tolerance. If it's a 5% tolerance, which come to think of it, maybe it is. Yeah, I think brown's 20, silver is 10, gold is 5, right? Something like that. Yeah, so then that would be okay if it was only 5%. Right? Because that would mean that as long as it's not out by more than like about 2.5K, it's fine. And it's supposed to be 47, and it's 46.3, so that's fine. And this next one was supposed to be 680. Or not 680, it's 6,800, 6.8K. So, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, look at that. Oh boy, 5. That's pretty far off, eh? Oh boy, let's get you back on there. Oh, come on now. Yeah. And that's also a gold band, you know, and that shouldn't be that far off. 5% would be like off by like, I don't know, like 0.3K or something like that. That's not cool. There's a reason for that though, I bet. This one's supposed to be 470 and it's great. Look, super close. 469 pretty much. Okay. So, but you see these ones are probably Okay, so you see, interesting. Okay, so depending, you see that these are wired together, these resistors, and because they're wired together, the resistances, they sort of like add up or subtract and divide and do all kinds of other crazy mathematical stuff. And depending on how we have this switch set right here, and you can see, look at that switch, there's like all kinds of little pins and contacts, there's tons of them here. And you know what, oops, I thought that was the transformer, but I was wrong, that's the switch. And you know, you can see the switch is connected to these resistors here, and I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty about exactly how everything's connected, but honestly, because frankly, not even I care about that. The switch just connects the resistors together in magical sorts of ways, and that allows this switch to do what it does best, which is attenuate the signal. And that's exactly what it does. You can see that's where the switch goes, and that goes right there. This is the attenuator. And what this all that does is, it's a pretty simple task while we're there. Might as well chat about it. Is if you have something that's super duper loud, like your acoustic guitar, with its battery and its amplified output, it's just way too loud, and no matter what the person with the soundboard does, they turn the volume all the way down on the mixer, they turn the preamp gain all the way down on the mixer, they do everything they possibly can, but it is still too loud. Well, you still got another trick. You can use this attenuator and you can attenuate it. And really all it does is it just takes your signal and it just wires it through these resistors right here, and it just resists the signal, literally. Like, this is what resistors do. They like slow down the flow of current. They lower the amount of electricity that's passing through the wiring right here. They resist the signal, you know? And depending on how you have the switch set, it uses a different resistor. And you know what's interesting about this is, remember that was 470, 6.8K, and 47K. Well, we know then that this is like the lowest amount of resistance, medium amount of resistance, and the most amount of resistance. So that's how you know how the attenuator works. It's actually super duper simple. All it does is it just switches a different resistor, and it adds more resistance the more you want to lower the volume of the signal. So like if you have a really loud output, you could attenuate it in this position, which is like a heck of a lot, like minus 40 dB, and you could plug like almost anything into that and not worry about it damaging the sound system at all. Like, of course, like, don't hold me to this, you know, like I don't want to be held responsible for this, but honestly, like this as long as it's set to -40 and you made sure to not accidentally flick the switch, you could probably plug like a speaker level output into the input of this and then plug it into a microphone input on the mixer and not have anything distort or sound weird. It would actually work. It would be really cool. Yeah, so that's a little bit about attenuators while we're at that. And it's just, you know, I just think that sort of stuff is so cool when you can like see it right there in front of you and you can like literally see where the electrons are going to go, where your musical notes are flowing, you know. They go in here through this hole and then they go through here, over there to this switch. And depending on how you want to attenuate that signal, or maybe you don't want to at all, the switch allows the signal to pass through there, and then it goes over here to transformer land. And it transforms your unbalanced signal into a balanced signal, and then it comes out of the other ones here, and then that, through these gray wiring harness right here, through this gray wire, it goes out the XLR down here. Isn't that cool? And then it goes into your soundboard there. And there you have it, folks. That's like what the inside of a DI looks like. And this one is just like that one, you know. And oh yeah, we got some other stuff over here. So we got the XLR socket right here, and there's not much to show you with that, but that's what the inside of it looks like, at least anyways, you know. But over here we got a switch, and that is your ground lift switch, and that's a really fun one to talk about. Let's dig into that. Okay, so your options here are lift or ground, okay? And literally what it does is, I'm just gonna move that out of the way so I got a bit more room here, is literally what the ground switch does is it allows you to get rid of hum or buzz or even shocks out of your system. And it's a really useful thing that you don't hear anything it does unless there's a problem. And if you don't hear any problems, then it probably won't do anything either. That's sort of how ground lift switches work. But if you've ever heard people talk about ground loops before, well, that's the problem that they fix. And ground loops are the reason for a lot of issues on stage and in studios. It's the issue for like weird hums and buzzes, and definitely the reason for shocks as well too. Yeah, so, and with this simple little switch you can fix it. And really all it does is it literally disconnects the ground from the signal. And really you can just see it right here. Like this is the XLR output right here, and the ground, which is this part right here where the black wire is connected, that is right there, the ground plane, and that's connected to the ground on the XLR socket, which is pin 1, by the way. Always pin 1 on XLRs, whether it's a female or male or socket or plug or whatever, it's always pin 1. And you can see you can disconnect it. And it's also wired to the body of the box here, which is always nice to see that with a nice big heavy duty green wire. That's awesome. Good on you, Art. Man, it's really well designed. Very good. Yeah, so, and you know what? They also use really good quality sockets and connectors and everything in here. Like this seriously is a really well made piece of gear. Yeah, so, you know, don't, like the brand name ones are awesome. Don't get me wrong, you know, but I'm just talking like literally and rationally talking like you're looking at it right here, folks. It's made out of really heavy gauge steel. It does use really high quality gold band resistors. All the components are nicely installed. They use lots and lots of good quality solder. They're soldered in here really well. The boards are nice and thick, and they're covered here with a protective layer. Seriously, it's really well made. This is great, you know. Kudos to you, Art. Yeah, so back to the ground lift. It disconnects it, and for example, one problem that would fix like is shocks. And the reason really why that happens is because there would be two independent electrical circuits in wherever it is that you are plugging things in, and the grounds from those different circuits, or technically speaking, the neutral side of the connection, is sort of imbalanced and it's floating. And I know that those are all a bunch of weird technical terms, and I wish I had a better way to demonstrate or describe that right now. But this is the best I got. So, yeah, the grounds would be floating, and then that causes like a difference in the electrical potential between the two systems. And because of that, there's like these stray electrons that are sort of flowing all over the place that don't know where to go. And then if you were to like stand up to a microphone and accidentally touch it with your lips because you were singing into it, like the metal on the microphone is conductive, and so is the saliva in your mouth and on your lips. And what it is all those stray electrons that are floating in the system between those two electrical circuits that have a slightly different electrical potential in them. The electrons don't know where to go, but when you're standing literally on the ground and your lips that are slightly humid because you're singing touch the microphone, those electrons instantly know what to do. They flow through you to the ground. And that is how you get a shock. That's what a shock is it's literally an electrical potential difference. It is like electric, like literally, I don't know how to say it any more specifically than that. Anyways, yeah, and that's why you get a shock. But you see, if you have a direct box and you flick that switch and you lift the ground, which means you disconnect this ground from the XLR, so like you disconnect the ground from the sound system to the thing that's plugged into it, then that means that the potential is no longer there, because there are no longer going to be any stray electrons that don't know where to go, that are just waiting for you to complete the circuit with your mouth touching the microphone so they can give you a shock. If you disconnect the ground by lifting it with the ground lift switch, then there is you've disconnected yourself from those floating circuits or any other ground loops or anything else like that. And that's how you can keep yourself safe from getting shocks. Now, don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean that when you're plugging into this, you should flick the lift and it's going to keep you safe from shocks. That is totally pretty much the opposite of what I'm trying to say, because that is totally untrue. Flicking this switch to the lift setting is not going to save you from shocks all of the time, okay? Oh, man. Wow, okay, good. I'm glad I caught that, because that could be super dangerous, okay? Like, all it's going to do is, if in the normal operation setting, which is ground, by the way, if you have a direct box and it has a switch on this, normally you would always leave it in the ground setting, because that will always keep you safe, okay? Or at least 99.9% of the time going to keep you safe. Only in those instances when you're plugged into the sound system and you have the ground lift switch set to ground and you're still getting a shock from the microphone, then flick it to lift, and then it will stop the shocks from happening. All you got to know is that normally you would use the ground lift switch in the ground setting. That's always going to keep you safe in 99% of the situations you're going to get into. It's going to make sure that there's no hum in the system. It's going to keep you safe from any ground loops. It's going to keep you safe from shocks, all that kind of stuff in the ground situation here. But in the case that it does not, and you are getting a shock, or you're getting some sort of a hum in this system, then you can flick it to lift, and it'll lift the ground up, disconnect the ground from the circuitry right here, and then it likely will get rid of that hum or the shock that you're getting. And if it doesn't, then you know that the problem resides elsewhere, and it's definitely not because of a ground loop issue. That's what the ground lift situation does here, is it fixes ground loops and the problems that those cause, which would be generally, it's like a big, like a hum in the system, like a that sort of thing, or shocks. A few of you out there are probably thinking, yeah, but like, how does that stop me from getting shocks from a microphone when microphones don't plug into a direct box? And you're totally right about that. What that means is it would only apply to if you're singing into a microphone and playing an instrument at the same time and you're plugged into a direct box. Like, for example, you're singing and playing the guitar. Your guitar is plugged into a DI, which is plugged into the sound system, and you're also singing into a microphone that's plugged into that same sound system. If you're getting a shock or you hear like a weird crazy hum, flick that ground lift switch and I bet it'll get rid of that shock and or that weird hum. So let's put her back together. Let's put that there and let's put those back on there. And oh yeah. Earlier we were kind of noticed that those transformers look a little bit different. And you know what that is that's just further evidence that this was actually made out of two completely independent direct boxes. And the reason I know that is because the transformers are a little bit different. They're the same model number. Oh, wait a minute. No, they're not even the same model number. Oh, yeah, they're the same model number. They're different, probably like production date codes or something like that. Okay, so let's not talk about that for a minute, because that's kind of neat information too. So they would make, probably Art Pro Audio's made like bajillions of these PDB direct boxes, the individual ones. And, you know, they would make them over the course of many weeks, months to years, right? And this one might have, this circuit board might have rolled off the production line like in the year 2009 and the 33rd week. And this one, I bet, would have rolled off the production line in perhaps 2008 in the 46th production week. I would bet that that's probably what those codes mean. Something along the lines of that, you know? And so you might think that, I'm dropping my probes here. You might think that, oh no, that's not a good thing, because this is a dual DI, a stereo DI, you know? And, you know, if you wanted to look at things from sort of like an audio file perspective, you'd want these to be identical, like to roll off the production line, one literally right after the other, meaning these transformers, I mean, and they would sound absolutely 100% identical and be wired and made exactly the same. But, you know, that is not what we have here. This is like sort of like an affordable, everyman's, you know, like just like the DI box you want to buy because you don't want to buy the audiophile one, right? And so, no, it's not going to have matched transformers inside of it. They might be slightly different. But the fact of the matter is, these transformers have a tolerance. The manufacturer for these could not put these out, they could not sell them to somebody unless they were within that manufacturing tolerance. And what that manufacturing tolerance means is that you can expect these sort of results from it within, say, 5 to 10%, you know, like it's going to transform your signal by like this much, and we guarantee it's not going to fluctuate by more than 5 to 10%, you know, whether you buy this transformer now, tomorrow, or 5 years from now, you know? And that's sort of the whole idea behind these. And then, so that's what also influences the price point of transformers and components and everything, you know, that's in everything that we make, you know? Like, these are probably super affordable transformers, and likely the tolerance is probably like not very high on them. It's probably like 10 to 20% or something like that. 20% is generally like a low tolerance, where 5% would be a high and mid would be 10%. in the world of electronics, at least anyways. So, you know, these are probably 20% tolerance. They're probably super cheap. But then again, that's all that's needed for something like this, because, you know, if you get into those higher tolerances, like you're getting into a point of diminished returns on the quality of signal that you get. And so for the market that they're wanting to sell this product to, and the price point that they want to be at, they know that those folks simply just probably don't care about that sort of stuff, you know? So they're not going to bother to put those transformers in it, because it will be a waste of money, you know? Like, why bother, you know? That's why companies like Radial make higher quality DI boxes and sell them for more money, and can get more money for them, because they use custom transformers that they make themselves in-house, and then they can have better quality control over them, and they can make sure that if they make a stereo DI, the transformers roll off the production line one right after the other, you know? I don't actually know if Radial does that or not. You know, I highly doubt that they even do. But if you wanted to make the best DI box in the entire world, that is exactly how you would do it, you know? And you would make sure that the well, there's lots of other things to it than that, I'm sure, you know? But, like, that's one thing you could do, I guess, at least. So, like, yeah, you know, these ones, the lettering's a little different, but they're the same part number. PTO 24-1 is on both of them, and they're the same tolerance. And although this one, it looks like it came out almost a year before this one, like this one looks a little older if it was 2008 in the 46th week, and this was 2009 in the 33rd week, then that would mean that this one's almost a year older. But, you know, transformers don't really age. Like, that's not really that big of a deal, you know, whatever. And the fluctuation and the tolerance of them, it would be a much bigger concern than the actual degradation for sitting on the shelf for 1 year before it got installed into something, you know? So, whatever. Okay. Whew. I didn't realize I could talk so much about tolerances, but oh boy, wasn't that fun, eh? Anyways, I'm not sure if there's anything more I could talk about inside of here. I'm really, literally scraping the bottom of the DI box here. Okay, let's put it back together now. Okay, let's make sure I put this on the right way, okay? So left is on that side. And, there we go. And, here we go. And I'm gonna, you know what? I think I'm gonna take advantage of this moment to share a couple of tips I use for just simply screwing things in. And here's one of them I really like right here, folks. Let's get that to focus. Okay. So, oh boy. Yeah. Whoa. Sorry, out of control here. Oh boy. Oh, thank God. Okay, didn't lose it. Alright, so here's a little trick I like to use to make sure that screws go in straight and they don't get cross-threaded. Okay? Here's what you do. So you just get your screw. Oh boy. You make sure that you forget to put it through the thing that you're supposed to put it through. There you go. And then you get your screw lined up there. And before you screw it, start turning it clockwise to make it go in the hole. First, you're just going to turn it a little bit counterclockwise. And you're going to wait for a click. There we go. And what that is it's the threads lining up. And they're syncing with each other. And once you feel it past that point, just a little bit, then you start turning it clockwise. Okay? So let's do that again. There. And then you know that the threads are lined up perfectly, and you can start just turning it in. And we're not going to turn it in all the way, just almost all the way. We'll do the final tighten up once all four of them are in. Okay? when we do it this way, it honestly, it doesn't really matter what order you put them in. As long as you don't tighten them up all the way, it doesn't really matter what order you put them in. But it does matter what order you put them in for the final tighten. Okay, so here we go. We'll go counterclockwise until we hear the click. There. You can feel it too. And now we'll tighten it up. Okay. And so we'll put these other ones in. An old boss of mine taught me that trick. And he's one of those super clever guys that is really good at figuring out stuff like this. His name is Gary. And Gary Stevens, actually. I wonder if any of you folks out there might know him. He's quite a character, man. What a heck of a guy. And yeah, he taught me that trick a long time ago. Way back when. I used to work at a hobby store. It's called Great Hobbies. And used to sell things like remote control airplanes and cars. And he was my boss back in the day, and he taught me that trick. Okay, so here we go. So now we've got all 4 screws in. They're not tightened up all the way, but now everything's all in, at least. So now we can get everything all lined up and squared up nice. Frankly, for the DI box, I don't really care how square it is. But, you know, somewhere down the road, you may be screwing something in, and you do care how everything's lined up. So this is how you do it. You just make sure that you get all the screws in first. Then you line it all up the way you want it all lined up, and then you tighten them up. And you go not around in a circle. You go crisscross them. You go like this one, then that one, and then that one. And that way, everything gets tightened up really nice and level at the same time. There's that one. And that one. That one. And the last one right here. And if you really want to be keen, you go over them again. And you know I'm going over them again. Left hand. Oh yeah. There we go. It's all tightened up again. Made sure to not forget to put my nuts back on there, and we'll make sure our attenuators are set. And oh yeah, you know what? I didn't mention this earlier. I forgot to. But your attenuator switches, normally you use them in the 0 dB setting. Okay? And when would you use them in the -20 or the 40? So -20, you're almost never going to use that one. -40, you're also almost never going to use that one as well too. In fact, you're pretty much going to use it in 0 dB all of the time. The only reason you change the switch is sort of like the ground lift thing. Like you always use this in ground, and you only ever set it to lift if you have a problem when you need to fix something. That's the same idea behind the attenuator switch. You always use it in 0 unless you need to fix a problem. And the problem it fixes is something is too loud, and you just need to make it more quiet. And you don't want to overdo it, so you wouldn't set it to 40 if 20 would do the job. You know what I mean? So you just leave it at 0, and if whatever you're plugging in is too loud, well, you put it to -20. And if it's still too loud, well, you set it to -40. And if it's still too loud, well, unplug it for... What the heck are you even plugging in at that point, right? You know, that's sort of the idea, right? So, yeah. That is something I sort of forgot to mention there earlier about attenuators. And, well, you know, I don't really think that there's a whole lot more I could really talk about with this, you know? Like, Oh, I know. You know, something that's kind of handy that you can use these for, like little problem-solving tricks, is if you only have a single DI, like you don't even need a dual DI, like just a single DI, if it has an input and an in-through on it like this, you can use that to plug a stereo signal into the PA and get both the left and right channels. And the way you do that is you just take like say you want to plug like your phone into the mixer. you'd take a cable that would have a little 1/8 of an inch connector on it. Let's see if I can find one here. I think I have one right here. Yeah, like that. You take a wire that has that on one end, one of those little 1/8 inch stereo connectors that plugs into your phone. And then, but you would need a cable that would take that and split it into like the 2/4 inch connectors. You know what I mean? Like a Y cable that plugs in here. And then you take the red and the white side, or the left and the right, or the yellow and the red, or whatever the heck colors they are, and you plug those both in here. And what the direct box does is it just combines them together. It mixes those two signals together so that you'd get the full stereo signal that will then go from the output of the direct box into the sound system. And you will hear the full stereo signal, but it won't be in stereo anymore because it's converting it from a stereo to a mono signal is what the direct box is doing. But at least it allows you to hear both the left and the right inputs, and you know that it's not canceling out the right channel like some things you might plug into, or some ways might do that. That's beyond the scope of what I want to get into right now, but this is a really safe way to plug a signal into the sound system, like from a laptop or phone or Discman or Walkman or whatever the heck it is that you're using, you know? Yeah, so that's kind of a handy trick you can do with them. Oh boy, what else? Speaking of that, if you wanted to get a full stereo signal out of your sound system, well, first your sound system would have to be wired in stereo. So you'd have to have like powered speakers for your mains, or 2 separate power amplifiers, or using a single amplifier in stereo mode. And you'd have to have like your main speakers wired in stereo for one. And what you would do is you would just simply plug like your left channel into like one side of this, and then the right channel into the other side with that same cable, like the Y cable from your laptop or phone or whatever. You just plug like the left one into this input, into the right one in that one, and then you run this cable into one channel on your mixer and that cable into the other channel on your mixer, and then you would just take those 2 channels, set them exactly the same, except you would pan them hard left and hard right, and then you would get a full stereo signal. But it would take up 2 channels in your mixer and like 2 XLR cables and a whole bunch of stuff, but you get like the full stereo signal, and that's really cool. Like full stereo live sound is awesome when it's mixed and set up really well. It is amazing, but it's got to be done right. Everything's got to be done right for it to really actually work and sound good. But when it is, boy oh boy, does it ever sound great. Just like really a lot of things in life, even the humble, simple little DI box, really, it doesn't really appear to do all that much when it's hanging out there at the bottom of our bag, the back of our sack, or bottom shelf of the music store, But even like the little DI box hanging out there at the bottom, it can still be right there at the top with everything else. At that, I think I'm going to wrap this video up. So without further ado, I just want to say thanks a lot for checking out my videos, folks. There's going to be a lot more stuff just like this to come. And I really appreciate any feedback that you can give me in the comment section on how I can make these videos better and more informative, and help support you folks as well out there, just like how you support me. So I really appreciate it if you can like the video. And if you'd like to see more, of course, don't forget to subscribe. And I'll catch you next time. Thanks a lot, folks. See you later.